Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is a Benjamin Bloom football channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join us to discuss the late breaking news this evening. Derby County have announced that they will be entering administration. Now, it is 11:05 at night. This story's kind of broken over the last 2 or 3 hours. I was going to make a lovely, nice video and package it up with a bow and all that stuff. But the easiest thing for me to do is just go live. And if we can get any reaction on the very, very bad news for Derby County from you lot, then please do. Terrible news for Derby fans, who are the people that obviously we're thinking of at the moment. But sadly, I think pretty inevitable news. I'll try and quickly précis what's happened, and then we'll go and check out the Derby website and see exactly what's been said. I've got the quotes from the EFL as well. Look, I seem to have done about 50 videos on Derby versus the EFL, and it goes back a couple of years, and the FFP and the profit and sustainability stuff looked like it was going to be agreed. And we were hearing news earlier this week that, there was some kind of negotiation or some kind of chat. And we heard that a 9-point deduction, a 3-point suspended deduction was coming. Obviously, they've, I think Alan Nixon on his Twitter from The Sun put, this is the nuclear option. And it does feel like that they couldn't get to that point, and Mel Morris has deemed that the best way, the only way, whichever terminology you want to use for this decision he's made, is to put the club into administration. So the initial charges, and remember with financial stuff, we're always way, way, way behind where we should be, because effectively, if £5 is spent in August by a football team, that then goes into that season's accounts, which is then not only not reported at the end of that season, reported at the end of the next season. So we get way, way behind. But the charges were basically, there was one due to the valuation of Pride Park, which was, like many clubs have legally done, sold back to Derby and then leased back to raise money short term. That wasn't the issue. They were not guilty on that. Let's not get bogged down with that. The one that really caught everything up was the amortization values of players and how Derby went about doing their accounts. And of course, I understand, and I'm sure I will receive the argument that the EFL signed off on that way of doing amortization, and then further down the line decided they didn't like it. So where we'd got to this summer was that was going to be looked at again, and Derby were resubmitting their accounts for August the 24th, and then they got like a 3-day extensions. I think the accounts went in, things were kind of looking like they were ticking along, and then we got to this week where I expected something to happen in the international break, because that's when the EFL tends to bury news and sort of get things done. But we've got into this week when the players have started playing again, and it's dropped tonight that the deduction or whatever hasn't been ratified or agreed upon, or whichever language you want to use. And Derby will be going into administration. We saw something. Football fans are so savvy now. They've all got notifications from Company's House. We saw something go up on Company's House early this evening, and the Derby fans were just all over it within seconds. The statement that came out on Derby's website did look prepared, but I'm sure they were rushed into it as the news was starting to kind of break. And apologies, because Derby fans are going to find some of the verbiage in this statement on the website possibly a little bit insulting, but look, it is what it is now, and we'll just read it for what it is. Derby today announced the club and all subsidiary companies have filed notices of intention to appoint administrators. So that obviously is the start of the official process. The action was made necessary by a number of developments last week. process has been underway to identify a purchaser for the club, which would not be productive over the near term, despite the negotiations of credible parties. I mean, just quickly to come back on that, Morris has been trying to sell Derby for the longest time. He's basically wanted out. If you remember, Derby in the first couple of years under Morris would sign Vidra or, I don't know, whoever, Tom Ince for loads of money to try and challenge those parachute teams. And then since about 2018, when Lampard came and they went to loan signings and then Koku, and it was very much youngsters plus Bielik for a bit of money, a lot of money actually, he's kind of stopped pushing and stopped pouring the money. And look, it was possibly unsustainable. I know he's a very, very, very wealthy man from about 3 years ago, but viable purchases, we seem to have got just charlatans most of the time. Because the COVID-19 pandemic, this is the bit that's going to irritate Derby fans, my apologies, had a severe impact on the revenues and profits of all its businesses. The club has been unable to service its day-to-day financial obligations. The directors had no choice but to make the tough decision to take this action. So, directors allegedly had no choice, and this is because of COVID. Derby are going into administration because of money lost because of the pandemic. The irony is that the club's financial forecasts show the emergence of a financially sustainable picture. Absent the COVID-19 panic, we undoubtedly would have been able to trade through. Look, there may be a kernel of truth in that if the pandemic hadn't happened, what I just said, were that Morris had stopped spending ridiculously, gone to loans under Lampard, youngsters, maybe there's the slightest kernel of truth in that. But sometimes truth and consequence are two entirely different things, aren't they? The impact of COVID and unpredictability has represents too much of a strain. As the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown tightened the grip, the club's revenues and cash flow took a circa £20 million hit. Yes, we know Derby are a big club with good commercials and good gate receipts. That's the same for everybody, though. Smaller clubs and bigger clubs than Derby. That is true. This season, COVID-19 has continued to have a negative effect. Majority of the outgoings being associated with playing staff who obviously could not be furloughed. It is widely known that we had significantly reduced our wage bill, but the major benefit, these reductions were not going to take effect until this season. Lockdown meant unable to have face-to-face meetings with purchasers. Okay. Planned sale of the club and stadium collapsed when the EFL was, quote, coerced into challenging the stadium sale transaction. Coerced. Sounds like fighting talk to me. A charge that would be dismissed some 9 months later. So there's the implication there that were the EFL not coerced into the first FFP charge, Derby would have been sold way back in 2020. Who knows? Who knows? It all sounds a little bit 2020 hindsight, this. Ongoing litigation and charges in regard to the P&S regulations, protracted timetable, blah, blah, blah. They're really going in on the EFL here. These issues also led the EFL to preclude the club from drawing down circa 8.3 million of financial assistance, as was made available to all other Championship clubs in respect of settling PAYE liabilities to HMRC, further aggravating our cash flow, our financial obligations. Even today, we await the EFL's response to these matters. The response is important to the club, its supporters, and to many prospective purchasers of the club. So look, it was COVID, and then it was the EFL being coerced into a P&S charge that stopped a buyer in 2020, and then the ongoing back and forth with the EFL, which means that, okay, there are two sides to this, that they weren't allowed to accept that £8.3 million payment. There's a lot of kind of finger pointing. I don't know how much acceptance there is on Derby's count. I can see loads of comments coming in. We'll get to them. I promise you. We wish to thank our supporters, staff, and especially our creditors. Yes. And I know there'll be a lot of, there's been fingers pointed by Derby. There'll be lots of conversations. Now, remember, a lot of people are now going to lose a lot of money because obviously administration means you get pennies on the pound for whatever is owed if you are indeed a creditor to Derby County. Remember, we do think that there's potentially a football club that's a big creditor to Derby County, because there was on the charge sheet recently, there was a part of a transfer fee that hadn't been paid. But I do think that disappeared from the charge sheet. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But they might have a football club as a creditor who's going to be losing money as well. We know this situation will raise concerns among supporters of the club. Respectfully ask that our supporters continue to show their support, especially to the playing staff under Rooney and employees who've been outstanding during these difficult times. I mean, that's probably true. They're giving it a decent enough go on the pitch. We'll look at what that's going to do. We appeal to the EFL now to assist the club and the administrators in any way they can in the effort to find a purchaser. We cannot stress enough how devastating it is to be forced into this position. We all, the owner, the members of the board, our staff, our true Derby supporters, will continue to work under the stewardship of the administrators to help facilitate their process, their effort to find a purchaser. My God. Look, there is a lot in there. Get your reactions in to some of the comments. I've got a lot to say, obviously. We'll get to your comments. So I can see tons and tons of them coming in. Of all the things that could have been said, I'm not sure that statement has quite hit the mark. They've kind of come out fighting with a lot of finger pointing, but ultimately, well, they say they had no choice. I don't know. Could they have taken the medicine from the EFL? Let's just be very clear about what happens with an administration. There's an automatic 12-point deduction. And I think the ruling is if you're already down, or then it moves on to the next season, doesn't it? But you would suspect a 12-point deduction would likely relegate Derby. There is the spectre and the rumour that the 9 points, and I'm sure Luton fans will have something to say about this, they were deducted tons of points one season, weren't they? Leeds as well. That the 9 points and the 3 suspended points, well, just take the 9 points, that's 21. And then there's 3 suspended points for a different charge as well. So you would likely think whatever the deduction is would relegate Derby anyway. But that's not the primary concern. Obviously, look, we feel for Derby fans. The primary concern is sort the club out, get it into new owners, clear the decks, start over. When I think of Derby, I think of Brian Clough and winning the championship in the 1970s. No, I wasn't around, but you know, it's a great club with a big history and a big fan base that aren't really going to be seeing these as quite the best of times, are they? So when the administrators come in, they will try and raise what they can and cut costs with whatever assets they've got. Now, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work outside of a transfer window, whether they will literally cut contracts and players will be available for free. Obviously, the horrible example we saw at Wigan happened outside of a transfer window, didn't we? So then the vultures swooped and literally any good player at Wigan, and let's be very fair, Nathan Byrne and David Marshall, 2 of them were taken by Derby during the administration. So Derby were the vultures. Look, no issue. Name any other club that took a player off a team in administration, fine. Whatever, they're going to be on the other side of it now. So you would think points deductions, whatever, players, you know, being sold for way less than their actual market value, and Derby will be in League One next season. Pretty much a certainty, isn't it? Guys, there's literally hundreds of comments in here. We will get to. We'll get to you guys. Look, let me just say now, if there's any comments, giving it the big one, I'm not going to read them. People are about to lose their jobs, and the Derby fans are not responsible for this particular mess. So if anyone's got input, I'm happy to read them out, but I don't want to get into the, you know, those sort of comments. It feels a little bit a little bit of a miss, doesn't it? Here's what the EFL said with confirmation from Derby. They have filed a notice of intention to appoint administrators. The EFL can tonight confirm the club will be subject to an insolvency event under the terms of the EFL regulations. As a result, the club faces a 12-point deduction. Once the EFL has the application, then the 12 points are going to be taken off. You'd expect that's coming soon. I mean, just take them off now. It's going to happen, isn't it? The EFL will in due course engage in discussion with the relevant parties with the aim of achieving successful outcome for the long-term future of the club. Let's be fair. Derby are going to be with the EFL if they're in League One next season. So some kind of relationship needs to be fostered, and maybe they can start afresh, provided Mel Morris hasn't burnt everybody's bridges there. Here's an interesting one. They have fired back the EFL. The league is disappointed with the comments made by the club in respect of COVID lending facilities. That was the 8.3 million that Derby said they weren't entitled to, that, or they couldn't get that every other championship club was entitled to. The EFL entered into a debt raise to provide its clubs with access to funds that would support them in dealing with the impact of COVID. And as with any loan, this was subject to a time frame and eligibility criteria, which Derby was unable to meet. So the EFL firing back, saying if you'd got your ducks in a row, and presumably that meant playing ball with the profit and sustainability and the FFP thing and the amortisation, they would have got the loan. So there's a bit of brinksmanship on both sides. And, well, Morris has certainly gone out on his sword, hasn't he, putting the club into administration rather than taking his medicine, so to speak, from the EFL. A few people whose opinion I respect. So John Percy of the Telegraph is always good with Derby stuff, isn't he? That particular area does sound like minus 21 points, a genuine possibility. So the 12 and the 9 for the breaches. Transfer embargo expected with administration too. Remember, to get Derby out of administration, the administrators, the EFL, and the new owners draw up a business plan that's very, very carefully monitored then going forward. And John Percy is mentioning possible transfer embargoes in the future. I'm sure if Derby fans look across at Wigan now, where the administration happened in the 1920 season, they survived in 2021 and they're up at the top of League One now and reinvesting and so on and so forth 2 seasons later, essentially. So look, whatever the timescale will be is what the timescale will be. There's Rob Dorset on from Sky on the right there. Just spoken to a devastated Mel Morris. Told me Derby have been losing 1.5 million a month because of COVID. And the breakdown in another takeover deal last week was key. Administration unavoidable. Those buyers may well come back in now that the price will be much lower in admin. Again, read into that what you will. The word is unavoidable or had no choice. And yeah, we get it. The pandemic ripped through everybody. That's Mel Morris's story. And he's sticking to it, isn't he? That, it does feel a little bit like you must have seen in a comedy show, you're fired. No, I'm not. I quit. No, you're fired. No, I said I quit first. It does feel a little bit like that, doesn't it, between Derby and the EFL, or Mel Morris, particularly in the EFL. Matt Slater down there, a lot to digest in this statement. A list of people that have conspired against the blameless owner, for example. But the most important thing to remember now is that good people will lose their jobs. Unsecured creditors will lose their money. Remember, unsecured creditors could be small companies or sole traders. And my team, Ipswich, went into administration after ITV Digital went bust. Ipswich got relegated and the money that they'd budgeted then just disappeared the next season. So they went into administration. They had nothing to pay the bills with. And there was a big furore. Small businesses particularly got very badly shafted. And forget the on-field or tribal rivalries. Matt Slater is right about that. But he is also right to point out the blameless owner. I'm not entirely sure what Mel Morris would have said that would have appeased the Derby fans in respects of, look, I tried, I failed, I've made some bad calls. This is my way out and this is what I'm going to do. Would that have really would that have really held water with Derby fans? Probably not. Kieran Maguire in the bottom right-hand corner, just pointing towards the real noose around Mel Morris's neck, which you can see there, bottom right, 2016 to 2018. What I sort of call it was, I'm trying to think who the managers were there. Gary Rowett was there 17, 18. Who was there before? Paul Clement? Nigel Pearson? I'm trying to think. Anyway, it just felt like at the start of every season, Derby, who never had parachute payments, it felt very much like they were gambling everything. And then all of a sudden, this was sort of 2 years after the parachute payments were cut down from 4 years to 3 years. So that first payment in year one, that swelled a little bit. At the same time, FFP got real. I know Birmingham's charge wasn't until 2019, was it? But yeah, you can see by Kieran's, sorry, that's the wrong button. You can see by Kieran's graphs there that a lot of money was lost. By God, 97 million. That's why the stadium sale had to happen at £80 million of paper value, didn't it? So that was the noose, and he's been chasing and chasing and chasing ever since. And Morris will probably argue, if COVID hadn't happened and if the EFL hadn't chased him, he would have found a way out of this. Remember as well, Derby have been in the playoff final twice, once under Steve McLaren and under Frank Lampard as well. And we know that is the cure-all. Up you go. Even one season, you're getting £170 million of broadcast income across the next 3 years, which has a quite cleansing effect, as certain clubs will probably tell you. Just get up there for one season. So here is the league table. You can see Derby in 16th. Sorry, let me just remove my little branding thing there. You can actually see how many points they've got. So Derby on 7 points from 7 games, which watchers of my channel will know. 1 point per game normally gets you survival in the Championship. The 10-year average for survival in the Championship is 45 points, and Derby are projecting 46. They obviously survived on the last day of last season. So they're kind of going the right way on the pitch, and we're all sort of saying, look, no chaos here. Keep the squad fit, the slim squad fit, and hope for some kind of takeover, and they might be able to do it. Obviously, the chaos has kicked in, and the 12-point deduction is going to put them on -5 points. So if that 12 points was meted out today, Derby would be on -5 points. So -5 points, and using my number of 45 to survive. Sometimes it's higher, but that's the average over the last 10 years. Derby would then need an slightly implausible 50 points from the remaining 39 games, which is a tweak up from where they're at the moment. Look, they win 3 games in a row. They probably project that number, but you know what these type of goings-on do to morale and psychologies of squads. And we do suspect that whether any players are just shipped out and contracts are just ended just like that, or it goes to January and we get one of those god-awful fire sales where any player who's any good at Derby will just be swept up by a Championship, or God, even, I mean, some of the names in League One could pay the wage on a 18-month deal if it's a free transfer, or Sunderland and Ipswich or Pompey, or whoever, Wigan. But looking at that squad, I mean, your eyes immediately go to Christian Bielik, who I think Derby's points per game pretty much goes up by a factor of about 50% when he's fit. He's probably the best player in the squad. Some good youngsters as well there at Derby as well. Jack Stretton, Festi Eversele, Jason Knight's ahead of those guys. First team football, Louis Sibley, Max Bird as well, Lee Buchanan. And this is the thing. I did say there was a kernel of truth, and the one kernel of truth in the statement that said they were working towards sustainability is those young players coming through. And we know that Jaden Bogle and Max Lowe was sold, I think combined, I think it reported for about 15 million quid for the pair. So Derby have good youngsters come through and have been able to sell them at good fees to Premier League clubs. Obviously, I don't think Sibley, Knight, Stretton, Bird, whoever, Eversaley, are going to be raising any kind of fees. And I'm sure there are, and it is vultures, isn't it? But it is what it is. And like I said, Derby took Nathan Byrne from Wigan and David Marshall. So, it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I think. But there will be plenty of CEOs or directors of football they'll be looking at the assets at Derby, particularly Christian Bielik, if they think they can pick him up. So, look, that is the Derby statement. That's where we are. There will be no profit and sustainability figure that we thought we were going to get last week in the international break, but there's going to be a -12. My take on it is I'm slightly surprised that it's gone to administration. I'll hold my hands up. I predicted Derby to finish bottom on the basis I suspected they'd be getting a 9-point deduction for FFP at some point during the season. That was my how I thought this would play out. And with the hands tied and the small squad, that would do for them. -6 did for Sheffield Wednesday, didn't it, last season? So I'm surprised it's gone the nuclear route to administration. I'm worried for a great football club that I enjoy going to, that's given English football some great players and one of the, if not the top manager, given, but worked for them in the 70s, obviously. And again, without getting very wishy-washy about it, you think about the fans, don't you? Because the fans don't, the fans aren't responsible for the sensible governance and financial security of their club. They just turn up and cheer and hope that the team can score some goals and win some games. And of course, if there are businesses, especially small businesses or sole traders who are unsecured creditors, then that could be not good. Very, very bad indeed. And, there will be people who go out of business as well as people who work down there as well, who aren't footballers, who are going to get swept up and probably get a pay rise at another club. That's not me having a pop at any of the players, but that's the difference between so-and-so who works in marketing over at Derby and Christian Bielik, who someone will offer more money than he's on at the moment because they're going to get him on a good contract in January, presumably. So, look, it's been coming. I expected something like this, but via the FFP route rather than the admin route. I'm not surprised in terms of the final outcome of now what we expect to happen to Derby this season. But I feel for the fans. I hope they get a good buyer, and I hope they can look at Wigan or Bolton, who have bounced back. And, these institutions, these clubs, and we don't want to see this be happening. Let's have a look at some comments here. Anybody? What have we got to say? Martin, I think there will be immediate deduction now, then more for failing to pay all creditors when they're in exit administration. Well, we saw in the wording of the rules that once the creditors appointed, the 12 points comes off. In terms of exit in administration, my understanding is that they only get to exit once everybody's signed off on the deal. So I don't think, I don't see the extra sanctions. Of course, there is the floating 9 points deduction for the amortization not being right, which puts them over the rolling 3-year losses limit. How many points? 21 or 12? Well, look, 12 is guaranteed, is where we're at with it, with the administration. Then we'll see if the FFP charge comes in. Has the table changed yet? Once again, once the administrator is officially appointed, the 12 points will be deducted, but they're going through the due process. It's going to happen. They've signalled their intent to go into admin. They've announced it. So they will be losing 12 points. This is not an if, but, or a maybe. Really, this isn't the end. Derby is a big football club, great history, passionate families. Might take a while, they'll be back. I hope you're right. Yeah, because it is a great club, isn't it? And they do the whole We Are Derby thing before the game and the history of it. It might be a couple of years, though. And again, to use that Wigan example, okay, it happened at the end of the season. So maybe Derby have got a run on it, but they're now getting back towards, look, they were halfway up the championship, so it might take them another 2 years to get up the championship. So there you go. Tom, the whole farce has been brewing for 2 years. Agreed. I'm absolutely gutted. I feel for you, mate. Hiding behind the pandemic from the owners is unforgivable. They say hang their heads in shame. So worried for the future. I agree with all of that. Tom, I can only try and empathise. My club went into administration 20 odd years ago, and I don't want to say this, as frankly never really recovered from, they put themselves on a good footing for the previous 5 years and never really managed to get back from that. I thought someone would bring this up. Bet Wycombe are fuming. This doesn't really have anything to do with Wycombe. I know people are going to look at Wycombe, Essex Lion, because they were relegated last season. But the administration has happened this season, so that's nothing to do with Wycombe. And the big delay on things happening when they did was a lot due to the EFL, not down to Derby. So, look, there's right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time, etc., etc. But I don't think now is the time to get angry on behalf of other clubs. Wycombe lost their first 7 games last season, and they'd probably argue that's why they went down. And good club, but I don't think that's the issue now. John, they need all points deduction this season to allow them to start next season in League One on a level playing field. That's normally the idea, isn't it, of the... Because let me get this right. So there is the scenario that a team is already guaranteed to be relegated, so then they put themselves into administration after, and then the 12 points goes next season, doesn't it? So, yeah, I honestly, in terms of clearing the decks, it would make sense for it to all happen this season. Shouldn't it? Can the EFL save the 9-point deduction for next year? Well, look, Lewis, we were expecting that this month right now. So, no, whatever you say about the EFL, and they do take ages, I've looked at it for Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday. I'll look at it for Derby. I'll come up with the exact dates. It's normally this sort of length time for them to come up with, and then normally there's an appeal from the club afterwards. Obviously, the administration is different because that's a hard and fast, black and white, bosh. You go into admin, 12 points as soon as you appoint the administrators. So, yes, we will see. Adrian, think this means Derby are down. Yeah, absolutely, doesn't it? They have to make sure they're ready for next season before they end up in the same place as Bolton. Yes, agreed there. Harvey, rivalry aside, feel for Derby fans and staff. No club should have to go through this. Hope Derby make it out the other side. Yeah, they're a big club with a lovely stadium and a big fan base. They're not going to be short of supporters and people wanting to come in and buy it. Exit. People saying we're already down. I just deluded. That's a appalling comment, Exit. You basically just called me deluded. We already have points on the board. It's only 12 points. We're at -5. That's only 2 points away from Forest. Look, Exit, I've given you the numbers. 45 points to survive. That's 50 points from 39 games. If I haven't got my phone, so I can't give you complete calculations. Plus, key players will be going. I think it's dreadfully insulting to call somebody who assumes that will end in relegation deluded. I think that's a poor comment, and I think it's very reasonable to assume it will end in relegation. And if it doesn't, that will be a miraculous escape. So please do be careful with throwing around silly words like deluded. That's poor. Bob, it's devastating as a Derby fan. My childhood memories are full of my dad taking me as a kid. I dreamt of taking my children. I fear it won't happen and liquidation is coming. Look, let's hope, Bob, that it's an attractive purchase at the low price with the debts gone. That surely someone will take it. Surely. So let's hope not on liquidation for sure. What else are we saying here? Derby haven't helped the EFL charges. They afforded every chance. Others like Blues and Sheffield Wednesday accepted the charge. Not only did Birmingham accept the charge, they actually then assisted as if to say, oh, we've broken FFP. And then they got a point back off the deduction, didn't it? There you go. David's done the numbers. Thank you. I don't have my phone. So, yeah, 50 points from 39 games, which, and again, to my numbers on this, is based on the average of the last 10 years. It could be more. I'm sure there'll be Charlton fans telling me Charlton got relegated with 49. But, yeah, 1.28 points per game. So that is, so they're on 1 point per game. So they're looking for a 28% uplift on what they've done at the moment with potentially worse players. So again, to that silly comment about people saying that's a deluded point of view, it's not. It's a very reasonable one. And I will be the first one, if it is Wayne Rooney, to be standing here applauding if they don't get relegated with a 12-point deduction. And of course, a 21-point deduction would be miraculous beyond, they basically need promotion form. Rooney to stay. Now, I've been quite bolshy about this, Josh, and said, why would Rooney go when he's got that lovely contract? But if you're an administrator cutting costs and that was possibly being funded by 32 Red, maybe an administrator in the best interest of the club on the basis they can get, name a name, Gary Monk to come in and do it for consultancy rate on a short-term contract, they will maybe cut that contract. So I don't know. You'd imagine there'll be some kind of discussion where it's going to cost them a pretty penny. They could ask him to step aside, etc. So. Look, we will see. I wonder if the situation will affect the players. I know as a Stoke fan, I don't like playing teams straight after they've gone into administration after our battering against Wigan last year. I suspect it would affect the players now. You'd think the psychology of the club is going to be problematic, and we'll see. Unless the fans take up a siege mentality. Yeah, Gary Monk, first name that came off the top of my head that would come in as a consultant. Yeah. AFC Bournemouth -17. Anything is possible. There you go. And look at Luton now as well, and look at where Leeds are as well. Steve, been a Derby fan for over 40 years. It's devastating news, but I have to be honest to the fact it's all our own doing. Well, that's very humble and honest of you, Steve. It's not your doing, buddy. It's not your fault. But yeah, it's the operational decisions made by your club that have done it. But I do feel sorry for the likes of you that have been fans for 40 years. Hal, my Derby supporting brother-in-law is absolutely gutted. He thinks it's the beginning of the end. Let's just hope that doomsday scenario is not there at all. Zest for Games, does the Pride Park situation impact buyers? I remember Coventry struggled to find a buyer in admin as Rico's. Yeah, that's a very good point. So the stadium is owned by a different holding company, which I guess is still owned by Mel Morris. So it'll be very, very interesting to see. It did say in the statement, let me see if I can quote from it, all holding companies, didn't it? The ultimate holding company of the group and all subsidiary companies. It would be very, very sneaky if the holding company that owned the stadium that Derby now effectively leased back for themselves was not classed in that. You wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. So yes, that can be prohibitive to new investors, and it's a lovely stadium that we know is worth £80 million because the EFL didn't go back on that. Did it? What else are we saying? Kane, as a Preston fan, I hope Derby can be saved. Yeah, of course. We don't want to see this chaos at clubs for sure. Steve, owner has unfortunately put us in this situation. I'll still support Derby until the day I die. Absolutely. ASOL, all our best players are out of contract this year, bar Bielik. Nothing to sell to raise funds for creditors. I mean, if that's the case, ASOL, then it's just going to be cost cutting and slashing wages. And there's an argument they've done most of that already, isn't it? So Bielik is the one asset, but you think a Sibley or a Bird, a Buchanan, those three between them should be over 10 million quid in good times. But yes, there's going to be people in for them very soon. I read a stadium. What else can it be used for other than football? I know, Martin, but what else it can be used for is a bargaining chip if they do still own it, doesn't they? PSF, Rooney won't stay. Derby will lose everything, including heart. So dark days ahead. I'm a Leeds fan. I can assure the carpet baggers will swoop. We know that. I remember looking at that Wigan team under Paul Cook. I wonder what became of him. That were, other than Leeds, we just mentioned Leeds, or maybe two teams, I think, were the informed team. And Marshall went, Robinson went, Byrne went, Dunkley went, Jacobs went, Morsey went, Morel went, Williams, Kiefer Moore, Jamal Lowe. Just the entire team got sold. A team that was kind of halfway up the championship, mustn't it? Josh, as a Forest fan, I hope Derby can sort themselves out. Going to League One might be a reset button. Yeah, I thought that about Ipswich, and I think Sheffield United fans and Sunderland fans hope the same thing. But there you go. Hopefully Derby can bounce back from this as a Reading fan. Hate to see stuff like this happen as well. It took Luton 10 years to recover from admin and a minus 30 deduction. Yeah, Luton had to go all the way down. Again, I feel that we should not get into the last season and that they weren't. I think we need to move on from last season because, look, the sanction still isn't finished. Now, I just don't think a few people bringing up Wickham, I just don't think that's what the focus should be now. The focus should be that Derby need to tool up for the end of the season and going forward, find a new owner, and the creditors need to get as much back of their money as they possibly can. Mr. Doer, I feel for the fans. Yeah, absolutely. Matthew, just thankful to the American owners that run Swansea that we didn't immediately spend big when we came down, which gave us stability, even though I hate those owners. And the big difference there, Matthew, is when Swansea came down, they had those lovely parachute payments, didn't they, for 3 seasons? And then the big sales of McBurney and James and Rodden, etc. Derby went from a position of already being in the Championship and a kind of close miss under Steve McLaren to spend without that big chunk of TV money to try and get up into the Premier League, which is sadly the cure all. John Percy said Bielik fee issue was sorted for the month only. God, how many instalments are they paying, Jim? I think you're making the same point there as well. Yeah, I agree. Really, Wickham has absolutely nothing to do with it. Yeah, I think they're emotional issues, and people get they're kind of the big bully Derby and little old Wickham coming up. Again, yeah, I don't think it's anything to do with it. Right. Thank you, everybody. It's coming up for midnight. We'll call it quits there. I was going to do a nice tidy video, like I said, with a bow, and put it out tomorrow morning. But this was just the easiest way of doing this. Thank you all for joining. Look, we have had some childish comments in the chat. You're going to get that. But thank you guys in the main for understanding. Let's not go with the no. Let's think about the fans at Derby that are going to be punished potentially for years for this, and the potential relegation and the creditors that are now coming. It's bad news at Derby. That is my reaction to the announcement that Derby are going into administration, 12-point deduction coming, potentially still a 9-point profit and sustainability one coming. Thank you, everybody. I can see there's over 300 of you in the chat here. Go to bed, you lot. I'm going to do the same. But big news. Thought we'd deal with it now. And yeah, just thoughts to the Derby fans, because it sucks. Good luck. Godspeed. Good night. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button and to be notified every time we upload. Ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.